Today's video, we've got two topics to talk about, and I was going back and forth as far as which one to start off with, and it's going to be this. Trey Lance, the third string quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, after officially naming Sam Darnold the backup, they are reportedly, the Niners, exploring trade options for Lance, which rehashes the topic of, oh my God, should the Vikings trade for Trey Lance? And as someone that has done content on this exact subject this past offseason, where I said, yeah, a conditional 6th or 7th round pick, why not? What's the worst that could happen? That was before training camp. And now that we are well into the preseason, we're 2.5 weeks away from the regular season starting. Absolutely not, knowing what we know now. Being a third string quarterback baseline is pretty bad. But in the case of Trey Lance over in San Francisco, it's much worse than you can even imagine, and here's why. The last 5 years, and with this first stat I'm going to give you, the only reason I can go back 5 years, this is from Pro Football Reference, they won't go any further than that. But of the last 5 years, as a team, the San Francisco 49ers, 4 of the last 5 seasons, were top 5 in yards after the catch. In other words, their weapons in the passing game, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, they do the heavy lifting. 2021 was the off year. They weren't top 5. Oh my God, they were top 10. 3 of the last 5 years, they were top 10 in rushing. 4 of the last 5 years, they had a top 5 defense. They've also had an NFC Championship game appearance and Super Bowl appearance with Jimmy Garoppolo, who at best was a middle-of-the-pack quarterback. They also had an NFC Championship game appearance on the back, not necessarily the back, but with Brock Purdy, that is before he got hurt in that game. He was the last pick of the 2022 draft, Mr. Irrelevant. What am I getting at here? The San Francisco 49ers, what they've got going on in Santa Clara, they are the most quarterback-friendly team in the league. It is the most literal example that I've ever seen in sports as far as just don't screw up of a job that I've ever seen in my life. It is the equivalent as far as the quarterback situation over there. They don't ask a lot of those players. It is the equivalent of kindergarten, and Trey Lance failed. They are telling you that he is awful, which is crazy to think about because going back in hindsight now, looking back at that trade, giving up 3 first-round picks to trade up to take Trey Lance 3rd overall is one of the worst trades in the history of the National Football League. For most teams, that's going to set you back a couple of years. The other side to look at it is, oddly enough, you still give John Lynch some praise because despite that, they are still contenders. They are still likely to end up in the NFC Championship game. They can still be Super Bowl contenders. Can they win a championship with Brock Purdy? Yes. Can they win a championship if Brock Purdy were to get hurt and Sam Darnold was to take over? Yes, they can. They are telling you that Trey Lance stinks. And we expect, for those that are saying, yeah, let's trade for Trey Lance, what's the worst that could happen? Now, knowing what we know now, we really expect this guy coming from the kindergarten of quarterbacks to come over to Kevin O'Connell's offense where, hey, quarterbacks, your precision is key. You're going to have to throw these receivers open in some cases. That's not Trey Lance. If you can't make it as a quarterback in San Francisco, I'm afraid that you can't make it as a quarterback in the league. The second topic I want to talk about, this comes from Diana Rossini, formerly of ESPN, now with The Athletic. She says that the Vikings and tight end TJ Hockenson have been in talks regarding a contract extension, but the two sides are far apart. Also adding that Hockenson wants to reset the tight end market, so he wants to surpass Darren Waller's average of $17 million per year. Far apart, she says. That's disappointing. When you go back to the trade that was done to acquire Hawkinson in the first place, you got it. When you're a GM any roster move that you make, it's not just for the now, but it's also for the later. The situation that Hawkinson was in was, okay, he was in his 4th year. He has his 5th year option. After that, he's a free agent. So when you make a trade like that for a player of his caliber, you're doing it with the mindset, we are going to give him an extension. A player of his caliber is going to ask for a lot of money. Now, granted, I didn't expect for him to have the mindset to want to reset the tight end market. But when you look at guys like Evan Ingram and David Njoku, their average value is $14 million per year. The difference between that and Darren Waller is $3 million. So, okay, I would say you got to set the contract, the new deal, somewhere between that. Let's say 15 and a half, 16 million, but he wants to reset the market. All right. Is $17.5 million, $18 million average value per year? Is it really that big of a deal? I don't really think so. This should not be a thing. You're 2.5 weeks away from the regular season starting. He wants to get paid. The Danielle Hunter situation, how that dragged on, the man held out, and I was saying the same thing. You either trade him, which I was in favor for, or you pay him what he wants. In 2022, he got paid $20 million. I said the entire time, he wants $20 million. This isn't hard. His reworked deal, $17 million baseline, $3 million incentives, $20 million. Whoop-de-doo. You got it done. This should not be a thing. Although I do find it interesting that now that his ear infection is all healed up, suddenly he's got a back situation, which I'm not saying it's not real. I'm not accusing him of faking it at all. I just find it interesting, intriguing, if you will. That, yeah, the ear infection, it's all cleared up now, but I got a back problem, right? You agree to a new deal, that ink hits that paper. You know what? This is the healthiest I've ever been. I'm good now. Let's rock, baby.